In the same video ISIS released, where they decapitated 21 Coptic Christians, they also warned, "We will conquer Rome by Allah's permission." Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer joins me. He's a retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel, and the author of Operation Dark Heart. Colonel Shaffer, welcome.
Thank you for having me on, Kennedy. You can be on. Thanks.
Well, let's talk a little bit about strategy. You know, my goal is to get all these Middle Eastern countries to work together to combat ISIS the way they should be combated from within. They know the region better. But my question to you is Egypt really in this?
Yes, we put together a strategy outlining exactly what you said last year. It's on our website, londoncenter.org. And there's two things you said were spot on. First, President al-Sisi is actually a War College graduate of the U.S. Army War College. He gets it. He's gotten it for a long time, and the reason they're not more involved, Kennedy, is because the White House doesn't want them. They have the most robust military in the Middle East. Secondly, as you pointed out in your opening, there's a lot of other militaries we've mentored, the Jordanians, the Saudis. We have been working with these folks for a long time, so it makes perfect sense that we come together, put them into what I would call an Arab NATO, if you will, to go about going after these guys. And simply put, what you're saying is absolutely correct. We've got to get those folks who live there, who know the region, who know the issues involved, and they don't need to be held back by us. They need to be mentored and given them additional weapons to go do the job.
I agree with that. Maybe not as much on the weapons part, but certainly with the mentoring. Now, President Obama has been criticized by members of his own party, by Republicans, by many people who served in the military, who served under him. And they all say the guy doesn't have a plan. I mean, what you're talking about, that sounds like a strategy. How do we go from that idea to action? How do you get the president to implement that?
Well, it's interesting. Many of the countries we're talking about here have actually read the strategy and are starting to implement it on their own. What's lacking here is a cohesive command and control. Someone has to be in charge. Someone has to focus everything. That's our job. We don't have to put boots on the ground. We've trained these boots. We've invested in them in the past 40 years. All we need to do now is actually show leadership. That's one of the things that President Obama has continued to fail in. And frankly, this strategy, the president's staff could pick it off our website, put their name on it, send it over to Congress. Congress has been briefed on this. We've been actually working with people like Joe Wilson, folks on the Senate side. We've briefed folks. People over there are aware of this, and I think that's why Congress is just kind of scratching their head saying, why doesn't the president put something together cohesive when other folks have?
Yeah, and all this talk about the AUMF, it seems to be a distraction from the greater plan and the greater strategy. How can you convince some of these other countries that we talked about, maybe Turkey, maybe UAE, maybe Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, how can you convince them to come on board before their citizens are beheaded?
It's a very difficult equation, and this goes back to Egypt. Egypt seems to be, there's an old saying, so goes Egypt, so goes the Arab world. Egypt has been a very robust society. They are a very large country, 90 million people. They have the ability, if we help them, to actually be the center point of NATO, of an Arab NATO, and then help them organize everyone else. Someone has to be in charge. It doesn't have to be us, but we have to basically plant that seed and get it moving. So as much as I don't think President Obama is going to do it, I think he's just trying to buy time. I think he's trying to slow things down. We've got to act. We've got to act with allies who are willing to act. And this is where Congress can do something it needs to, basically is legislate around the president if necessary to help our allies do what's necessary in their own self-interest and in our interest as well.
Well, and that's what I'm looking at when I see these congressional fights, you know, and having this be overly politicized is really quite dangerous because, you know, you're just putting time on ISIS's side. Let's talk about their shift. What do you think has made them specifically turn against Christians? Because it seems like a pretty drastic turn just in the last week or so.
Well, they've been going after the Yazidi as well. I've met with the Yazidi, the Christian Yazidi, the Assyrians who are mostly Christian. There are some Kurds who are Christian. I've met them right here on Capitol Hill, Kennedy, and they've said, look, just train us, arm us, let us go back in, and that's in Syria and Iraq. Now the Coptic Christians are a whole different thing. One of the things, I was in Egypt last December, met with General Al-Tohimi, the chief of Egyptian intelligence, and he said, we asked him, are you having a hard time with Libyan refugees? He says, no, we're having a hard time getting Egyptians to go back into Libya to run it. And as you point out in the opening, the Egyptians are there to make money. The Christians are part of the group trying to work and make Libya a viable country again. And it's a shame now that these Christians have been targeted for the same purpose anyone else is by ISIS. They don't believe the same belief as the ISIS folks do, and they're going to be persecuted or subjugated or beheaded as they did in this case.
Yeah, and they've had a hard enough time in Egypt, and even though they know that Libya is a dangerous place, it has been a guaranteed income. So, you know, it's certainly a difficult spot for this community. Lieutenant Colonel, thanks so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me, Leah.
Indeed. For the last